Hey everybody. How's everybody doing? Nods and waves and smiles are welcome at this point. Yeah. Drew. Yay. How you doing, Melinda Estabrooks? she's she's in the kitchen, and so I just did that to like make her feel uncomfortable on the call because she's down the hall and I'm in my little room in the front trying to preach a sermon while she's doing the dishes. So um if we can't have fun here, where can we have fun? You know, for the love. Theo, thanks for reading that passage. It is such a weird and wonderful passage full of so many strange things happening. It's always been one of my favorites. I think every time I've had an opportunity to speak or preach or teach on a passage after Easter, my go-to is the Emmaus Road encounter. I just think it says everything, and it's always in season, and it feels super in season right now. There's a lot going on in this passage, this famous walk to Emmaus. Like so much going on. So Theo, you did an amazing job giving us the story, but I'm just going to do a quick recap of the main points. And as I'm presenting these, maybe just a couple of things to hold on to as I highlight the notes. So the first thing we need to get, I think, in order to really enter into the story, is that these two disciples they're walking to Emmaus from Jerusalem. It's after the crucifixion and of course the resurrection. After the big holy holidays of Passover. These two are Jesus followers, but we don't know much else about them. We know that, they're walking back, probably a little bit discouraged, a little bit disoriented, not fully understanding what the heck is going on. There are some folks who are biblical scholar, theologian types who have made entire careers out of trying to understand why they were walking to Emmaus. I've read a couple of papers on the purpose of the walk to Emmaus. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that they were probably just walking home. They lived there. I don't think there's any like deep, super hyper theological significance to the walk, other than the fact that things get a little weird and wonderful on this walk. But yeah, I think they were just walking home, and we'll maybe talk a little bit more about that later. But these two are talking about everything that has just happened, and they're clearly traumatized. They're shaken, and it's evidenced in the way that the interaction goes down. So they're walking home. Jesus has been crucified. The Marys have gone to the tomb to find nothing there. Some of the other followers of Jesus went to the tomb to confirm what the Marys had seen. Where's Jesus? What the heck is going on? Okay, time to walk home. We got to figure this out. So these two are like, they're having a day. They're having a week. it's not going great. Everything's kind of weird. So they're talking about everything that had just happened, and they meet a guy. Who's walking the same way, walking on the road to Emmaus, and they strike up a conversation like we all do when we're walking and we bump into someone, like, hey, how's it going? Nice weather we're having. But, like, just, hey, how's it going? The guy is actually Jesus. We know that because we get to read the story. We understand that it's Jesus, but they don't know that it's Jesus. So that's already, we get this like delicious, super fun tension in the story where we know something that these two disciples don't know. Like, oh my gosh, it's Jesus. Oh, but they don't know. So we'll call the guy until we realize that it's Jesus. So the guy is all like, what you talking about? And the two, our two walking disciples, they're all depressed and stuff. And the passage actually says that when Jesus asks them, hey, what are you talking about? They stood still their face downcast. Cue sad music and one lonely tear, right? They don't know it's Jesus. So they're like, hey, you're asking us what we're talking about? Are you the, like, I like how Theo put it, like, have you been living under a rock? Which the irony, again, super delicious. They're talking to Jesus about Jesus. Like, you don't know what happened? Are you the only one who doesn't know what happened? And then they go ahead into telling him the whole story of him, which again, I think is super funny. Um, kind of like, hey, yeah, like, this is what's going on. Have you heard of Jesus? And I can just imagine Jesus going, tell me more. No, this is great. Like, tell me what you know. Yeah, there's this guy, Jesus. He was a prophet and a teacher, son of God. He did amazing miracles. He's the Messiah, but the Romans crucified him because he was stirring stuff up. But then they put him in a tomb, and then the Marys went to dress his body, and he wasn't there. So they went and got the guys, and the guys were like, yep, he's not there. And that happened. And like, stuff is happening. And you don't know anything about this. And then Jesus, being all Jesus in the classic Jesus way, lets them know, wow, you guys just don't get it, eh? Like, you really don't get it. Cool. And this guy, our mystery guy, explains the law and the prophets through a Jesus or messianic lens and shows them everything that points to himself. They have this ultimate, like, one-on-one high tier level Patreon moment where they get all access to all of the exclusive content, all of the exclusive teaching on this walk. And he's still not recognized as Jesus in this moment. So the walking disciples are blown away by this teaching moment, by this new content access that they just received on their high level Patreon tier. I'll stop with the Patreon thing, but it seems like that. It seems like it's like you get this special access to this content and you're still not getting it. But the guys are blown away, but they still don't know it's him. And so they invite him over for dinner, which, by the way, is why I think they were just walking home, because you don't invite someone over for dinner to someone else's house unless you are that friend. We all have that friend. Like, we have maybe been that friend at some time where you're over at someone's house and someone else comes over and like, hey, you should totally stay for dinner. Not my house. But anyway, I don't think they were that guy. I think that they were the kind of people who would just, they're heading home. They want to invite Jesus home over for dinner. And they get home, they eat dinner, the stranger breaks bread, and it's at that moment they realize, holy crap, it's Jesus. I'd like that, Grace, to be like the tag from the sermon, like just the quotes, the holy crap, it's Jesus. I think that kind of sums up the story. And then he vanishes. Totally normal story going on here. Totally normal story. The entire story, they're walking with Jesus. They don't know it's Jesus. They realize it's Jesus. Jesus disappears. Nothing to see here. Everything is fine. Everything will be fine. So that's it. That's Easter. For these two disciples, walking down a lonely road, feeling disoriented, not knowing what's happening or what's going to happen. Not even in a space to be able to recognize Jesus, even when he's right in front of them. And I don't want to project my space onto you, but this story feels very familiar right now. Like, Easter just happened. We just had Easter, but it doesn't really feel like it. Last week was so great. We're hanging out in the park. This week it's lockdown and it's lousy weather. Like, this is not how the story goes. It's supposed to be getting progressively better. No. But a few things happen in this story, and a few things happen in this passage, in this interaction with Jesus, that I think it can give us some stuff to hold on to. I think it can give us a little bit of hope, if hope is not coming easily right now. It gives us a little bit of that Easter goodness if the Easter goodness is feeling hard to see. A little bit of the new life, a little bit of the freedom when things do not feel new and things do not feel free. but it gives us some things that I think can happen for us. I mentioned before, I think when I've had opportunity to share, like I grew up Anglican. Don't hold that against me. Nobody's perfect. Um, but I grew up in the Anglican church. My dad and my mom both worked in the church. My mom was the organist. My dad was the priest, and so that was my life. I was practically born in a pew and just went to church every Sunday. So in the Anglican tradition, the worship year is organized around what's called the liturgical calendar. Some of you have probably heard about the liturgical calendar, but just real quick for those who don't, the Sundays of the year are organized into different liturgical seasons. And generally, the liturgical seasons that we follow in Western Christianity, as it's called, are, we have Advent, we move into Christmas, we have what's called ordinary time, time after Epiphany, then we move into Lent, approaching Easter. Then we have ordinary time that counts as Easter tide, which is like another feast, which takes us 50 days right up to Pentecost. Everybody with me? There'll be a test later. No, there won't be. But we're in that season of Easter tide right now. 50 days, like I said, right up until Pentecost Sunday. And in this tradition, in the tradition where that I grew up in, and that probably some of you are very familiar with, we would call this would be like technically like the second Sunday of Easter. Last Sunday was the first Sunday of Easter. This is the second Sunday of Easter. And we track through each Sunday in this season as if it is Easter Sunday all over again in my tradition that I grew up in. And growing up, I remember clearly, like, it's the second Sunday of Easter, cool. And I would try and play hey, if every Sunday is Easter, why don't we get chocolate every Sunday? Why don't we get all that good candy stuff? And to no avail, it never worked. But every Sunday is an opportunity to keep space around the theme of resurrection and new life. And I think this is good news for us. I think this is something that we can, even if it's not our tradition, we can take this Easter moment and say, okay, actually, I'm going to stretch it out over the next 5 or 6 weeks. If it's not coming easy, if the joy of Easter, if the resurrection reality of Easter, if the new life and excitement of all of that is not coming super easily right now, it's cool. I've got like 4 more weeks. There is space and grace to spiritually and even intellectually, if we have to, ascend into that Easter space. It doesn't have to happen right away. I think it's good news for us. We need to be kind to ourselves, and we need to give ourselves a break, and it's okay if we don't feel it right now. And again, I'm preaching a lot to myself here, but I'm hoping that there are a few that are going to come along with me. But it's good news because we can take this season slowly and discover that joy, and we can slowly discover that life. The Emmaus passage is such a great, I think, motif for us because it's a long walk and there's time. And we can take that concept of it being a long walk and having the time and be just like our 2 disciples walking to Emmaus. Maybe we don't really have any idea what's going on right now. We've got a little glimmer. We've got a little glimpse. Maybe we're not sure about everything at this point, and yet Jesus meets them there. And there's no reason to expect that Jesus won't meet us here where we are right now. I think if anything, the extending of the Easter season, it will create space for us, more space if we need it, more time if we need it, to linger on the theme of resurrection and slowly, if necessary, try and figure out how to live it out. And the beauty here is that, okay, so you're like, Chris, I'm not struggling. Actually, I'm really like, I got the joy, like I'm good to go. Awesome. Cool. If you're in like Flynn and feeling it right now, that's awesome. You have more time to linger in that awesome, beautiful reality. So it's like, it's win-win. It's win-win. And so we can lean into this. I think it takes the pressure off, I feel. But there's something else going on here in our passage. Have you ever had that experience where sometimes the harder we look for something, the harder it is to see it or to find it. Anybody? Any hands, nods? Yes, I see. Yep. Feeling it. Yes, Grace, keys every day. Yep. This happens to me all the time. All the time. And it mainly happens in two ways. First, there's the fridge situation. Is Mel still here behind me? Yeah, okay. Yeah. So I am the fridge stander, opener, starer guy. That's the actual scientific term for it. Yeah, we have a support group. It's really great. Working on a name, but t-shirts have been, designed, and just kidding. But I am that guy. I go to the fridge and I stand there and I stare and I don't know what I'm looking for. I know I'm looking for something. And then the harder I'm looking for it, I get frazzled because I can't remember. And then I try to remember and not remember. And then I go through that process in my head about 12 times until Mel asks me, like, what are you looking for? Which usually snaps me out of it or prompts me to slam the fridge in defeat and walk away and be like, I don't know. I don't know what I want. I'm on the fast track to becoming a grumpy old man, but like, I don't know what I want, and then just walk away all defeated. Yeah, but that happens. That's a thing. And it's like, it's very strange. And the other thing that happens, and Grace, I think this one's for you. Yeah, the car keys. Not so much lately because I don't go anywhere. There's nowhere to go. But yeah, it usually happens where it's right before we need to leave and we're already running late. Can't find the keys. Where are they? And you start by looking in all the usual spots. You look in the dresser, you look in the dresser drawers, you look on the desks, then you look in the pants that you wore 2 days ago. Then you check the jacket pockets, no dice. And then you start to check the weird spots, right? Like we all do it, right? Like, back to the fridge. Maybe I put them in the fridge. And then you're standing at the fridge and then you're like, wait, why am I standing at the fridge? I can't remember what I'm looking. Oh, my keys, which is totally counterintuitive. You look under the couch, you look in the bathroom because, hey, maybe. Then you go back to the fridge one more time. And it's in moments like these where the stress of being late and the delay losing your keys, it snowballs into this huge anxious mess where you finally clue in that your keys are in your hand or right there or in your back pocket. They're right. It was there the whole time. And our two walking disciples are having this very experience, except it's not at the fridge. It's not with their keys. It's with Jesus. They are stressing out, freaked out, anxious, not seeing what's right in front of them, super desperate to see Jesus, telling this guy, this stranger, the whole story, like talking about Jesus to Jesus. Like, don't you know what happened? Like they can't see it. Their grief and their worry and their anxiety made it incredibly hard to see. And this bit is for me. And like I said, if it resonates with you, I'm super happy about that. But this season, the season that we're in of, like a year of pandemic and all of the disorienting stuff that is happening, I don't want to linger and dwell on it, but it's just part of the reality, right? Like it is part of where we're at right now. But this season is weird. Yeah, we're in another lockdown. We got summer might be different again. And then the most annoying thing for me is that we're probably going to have another round of those commercials with like warm voiced corporate spokespeople talking about things like, things are going to look a little different this year, but hey, we've got your back. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Thanks, Canadian Tire. Like, can I have a free barbecue then? No? Okay. Well, then what good are you to me? Like, the whole thing is very strange. And yeah, things are weird and stressful. And trying to find Easter joy when things are weird and stressful is in and of itself weird and stressful. And sometimes the harder I look, the harder it is to see. But I think today I would say to all of us and to myself that it is okay to just stop for a minute and take a deep breath and just be. After the fret, after the worry, after the anxiety passes, just be and trust. If you don't have the right answers, if you don't have the right words, that's okay. Just trust. Like, just trust. Um, some of you might be familiar with Pete Enns. He's an author, teacher, he's a podcaster, and he has this book that we read as a midweek group called "The Sin of Certainty." It sounds like super edgy. It's all about trusting God, and it's super. I found it really encouraging. But Pete Enns writes this. He says, "I have come to believe that periods of struggling and doubt are such common experiences of faith, including in the Bible." Referring to our like Emmaus buddies and many other people and characters in the Bible who struggle. Um, yeah, including in the Bible, that something is meant to be learned from such periods, however long in duration they might be. He writes, I feel it is part of the mystery of faith that things normally do not line up entirely. And so when they don't, it's not a signal to me that the journey is at an end, but that I am still on it. As I reflect on my own experience and that of many others far wiser than I, this is Pete still writing, um, God seems willing to help that process along. It's okay for things not to line up. And it's okay to not feel super Eastery around Easter, but we are still moving. We're on this walk. We're on this path. And I firmly believe, just as demonstrated in the passage of scripture that we read, and as Pete Enns affirms, that God seems willing to help that process along, more than willing to help the process along, but to meet us right in that moment. And even if we can't see it, still there, full of like grace and just like, yeah, cool, tell me all about it, like he meets us there. I love how Jesus doesn't jump in and give them all the answers, or be all, surprise, it's me. He asks them after they flip out about him not knowing what went down in Jerusalem. He's like, oh yeah, tell me what happened. And I don't know about you, but there is something innately comforting about the risen Christ meeting two disciples along the road, making that space, asking them, hey, tell me what's up. I feel that the space that we're in right now is like a real God sort of coming to us and saying, it's like, hey, just tell me what's up. Just tell me what's up. Super comforting to me. I hope that you find some, comfort in that too. It's just, to me, the imagery of that is super beautiful. I think to move into like sort of the closing of this, like all of what we see in this passage points to some pretty meaty truths. One of them being that like we don't walk alone. At the end of the story, our walking disciples, they do make it to Emmaus just in time for dinner, and Jesus stays and breaks bread with them. And this is the moment where things kind of click. It's in the moment of sharing a meal. It's in the moment of being in someone's home together. It's in the moment of sitting face to face with Jesus. Very similar to what we're doing this morning, like carving out some space and being together, even via Zoom, even with cameras, but still sharing that face-to-face time together. It's in that moment where things click and their eyes are open and they realize, wow, oh, it's Jesus. the whole time, the whole time he was there. And, I used to read this story, and as a kid, it kind of reminded me of Scooby-Doo, like where you realize who the person is at the end, like, but except it's not the bad guy, it's Jesus. It's like, old Mr. McGregor, and I would have gotten away with it if it hadn't been for you rotten kids. Like, but it's Jesus. And then he just vanishes. He's gone. And they go back to Jerusalem, like, yeah, guys, like, game on. We're good. Things are happening. Things are moving in the right direction. There's something about the importance of community in helping us to see the things that we might not have recognized on our own. There's something about taking time like this, taking time like Jesus did with the two walking disciples, about being in this space together and opening ourselves up to learning and listening about maybe some things that we just couldn't realize on our own, or maybe some things that we had trouble seeing. Just like when Mel snaps me out of my fridge trance. Like I need her to be like, hey, what are you looking for? I'm like, oh yeah. Like we need that external nudge sometimes, because we get into our own echo chambers, and you know, the negatives and the loss and the lack becomes loud. But the truth of provision and grace and mercy are things that we totally need to be reminded of. There's this idea throughout this story, this thread, that God's faithfulness is made manifest, not necessarily in helping us to avoid the difficult times and the difficult things, but by providing and equipping us with the things and the people we need to make it through. When we read how these two disciples struggled through trying to understand Easter, understand what was going on when life wasn't feeling easy, when hope was hard, and like when joy was totally elusive, yeah, there's this thread of grace and God's care, I think, running through all of it. And for us this morning, I would say it's okay if it takes a while. We're on a journey. We're on the road. Just like Pete ends, like when things get hard or when things don't line up, it doesn't mean that the journey is over. It means that I'm still on the journey. And that's okay. If we feel like we have to look so hard, if we feel like we have to struggle to see that glimmer of life or joy, it is okay. We can stop striving. We can stop struggling. We can just do some deep breaths and feel, and see and sense and hear and listen quietly. Just stop doing and be. And that's okay. Jesus meets us there and is just saying, tell me about it. Stop struggling. And we can know that we do it all in community. We're not alone. And that if you're here this morning, I don't know if you're part of a midweek group, if you're tracking along with people, even if it's not a super churchy thing that you do, if you've got some people that you can walk along with, you're not alone. And you're enough, and you're on the path, and you are walking, and that is good. That is good. So my hope would be that, as we're in this season, that we would continue to be those encouraging walking disciples for one another, that we would give the same grace and self-care to ourselves that we extend to other people, that it's okay if things don't line up, and that we would just continually encourage one another and remind one another that we're doing this together, and it's okay. It's going to be okay. So he is risen. He is risen indeed. And we've got like 5 more weeks to figure it out. Awesome. Amen. Cool. I guess I'll just close in a quick little prayer. And I think that, if I could give homework, not that I'm in a position to give homework, I'd really like you to read this story over the week. As many times as you can, stay in it. Where are you in the story? Who are you in the story? What character are you in that story? How do you receive the words of Jesus? Yeah. And just know that it's done. It's there. I love what Alex just pointed out. Alex in the chat just said, it's interesting to me that Jesus instills hope and does his work before people even know it's him. Yeah, like the table is set. The table is set. So I'll pray for us quick and then hand it, I guess, back to Drew. God, thank you for this community. Thank you for your provision and your grace. Thank you that you give us everything we need. And thank you that your approach to us, even when we're not getting it, is still one of, hey, just talk to me, just tell me what's up. God, I'm hopeful and expecting um, the good, all of the good that comes with Easter. And as we move into this sort of next season as a church, as a community, we're excited for the opportunities that you provide, the opportunities for us to bear witness to your goodness and your faithfulness in the community that we serve, the opportunity to be an encouragement and source of care for the people in our community, the people who make up this church and beyond. But God, there are times when it seems like super hard to see the good stuff happening. And I just pray that we would continue to be gentle with ourselves, that we would extend the same level of care to ourselves that we would extend to someone that we were trying to care for. And that we would find, those little slivers of grace and light and life that come from you, and that we would hold on to them and continue on the path and continue to walk forward. Yeah, so we commit this time to you. We commit our weeks to you. And we look forward to the good things that you're doing in our lives, in the lives of the people that make up our spheres, our communities. We move forward in resurrection life. Help us to be faithful bearers of that message. In Jesus' name, amen.
Chris, thank you so much for that timely word and message. I wrote this down in my notes. We can take the season of Easter slowly and slowly, spiritually, and even intellectually ascend to the hope and joy that we have in Jesus. And I love that. So let me just send you with this blessing. To God be the glory, and to the earth be peace. And to you, reunion, faith. Faith as you journey and ascend to the hope and the joy that we have in Jesus. And may the grace of Jesus be with you now and forever. And may you, for each other, help one another focus your eyes on Jesus along the way.